Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Pete Dougherty. Here on the Friday before football, Pete, we made it. It's finally here. We're finally back. The Packers play a real football game on Sunday and against a divisional rival, no less, in the Minnesota Vikings. What a way to kickstart the season, right? I mean, and a great test, too.
Yeah, exciting stuff, and it is a great test for this defense. Because it definitely looks quite a bit better. But the thing we also have to remember is weird stuff happens early, especially that first week. Um, so I don't draw many conclusions. You don't do it from any one game anyway, but really weird things can happen the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks of the season. So
Like
who
losing
knows?
to the New Orleans Saints in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, by not just losing, getting blown off the field.
Like a hurricane came through there. Um, the final injury report of the week did come out just a few minutes ago, and LaFleur had already sort of told us what the big names off of it would be. David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins are considered questionable. David Bakhtiari, for what it's worth, was on the bike during the portion of practice that was open to the media today. Alan Lazard is doubtful. He spent all week working in rehab, and he spent last Wednesday. So over a week now, he's been in rehab over the long weekend as well, had time to recover. He said he told our Ryan Wood today that he was stepped on by a defensive tackle in practice last week. I don't know if I would want to be. I can imagine how painful that is to be stepped on by an NFL defensive tackle. But Pete, just kind of initial thoughts of what this wide receiving core can look like. I mean, Alan Lazard was its wide receiver one for better or for worse, and now they're probably not even going to have that. Granted, it is week one, but I mean, are we going to be leaning on rookies a lot sooner than we thought the Packers would?
A little more, but those guys were going to play anyway. Romeo Dobbs was definitely going to play a decent amount. I guess there's a big difference between a team's number one receiver and an NFL number one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Lazard is the Packers one, but it's not like, I mean, it's nothing even in the same stratosphere as having Adams as your number one. Lazard is never gonna be a guy that teams. I don't think anyway that teams will have to game plan to take him away. So of course, it changes things because that's a guy Rodgers really trusts. If Lazard is healthy for, if he only misses 1 or 2 games, I could see him easily catching, I don't know, 70 balls, something like that. But they're going to run the ball a lot. The backs are going to get the ball a lot in the passing game. The ball is going to be spread out, I would think, a lot between the different receivers, especially week to week. Um, so it's just going to be a different kind of offense than we've been used to seeing for really the last 12 years or so, but especially the last three where it's been so Adams centric.
Mm-hmm. This is actually a really interesting topic to bring up, considering the conversation I just had in the locker room. Um, we were talking with Aaron Jones, and I made the comment like, so much offseason hype has been given to this defense. What are we forgetting about this offense? And he said that 12's the quarterback. So we've always got a shot with Aaron Rodgers behind center. But then we were wrapping up. Cameras had been turned off. We had just asked about Bobby Tunyon, who, by all accounts, should play on Sunday. It will be the first time he's played since tearing his ACL week 8 last year. And asked about having Tunyon back out there, what that does for the offense. And as we were finishing up, Aaron Jones sort of like pointed down to Tunyon's locker and he said, "People are sleeping on him." He said, and that's who people are sleeping on, is that guy right there. And he wasn't in there, but he was talking about him. And I said, just because he was hurt? And he goes, yeah, because he was hurt and people forgot about him. And, he was just coming on when he got hurt. So it was a short sample size. And he said, but people don't understand the sort of connection he has with Rodgers. He was like, he can do anything. He can catch anything. He has stick 'em for hands. And he said, and people want to talk about with all these different receivers that maybe I could lead the receivers this year. He said, Bobby is who can lead us as a leading receiver on this offense. And that's a take I'd not really heard yet. But I mean, Aaron Jones would know a lot better than we would. Is that feasible?
Yeah. Now the one thing I wonder about is because coming off an ACL, I'm not sure how impactful he'll be for the first month or 6 weeks. Maybe he'll come out like gangbusters. I'm thinking that they're going to limit his snaps early on. For the first couple of weeks, it's going to be a slow ramp up, So um, I think if I'm the Packers, what I'm most looking for, I've talked to team orthopedists, guys from other teams, and what they've told me is the main reason it really takes a full year for a guy to come back from the ACL is, in 9 months they can play, and the chances of getting arthritis and compensatory injuries and all that drops a lot. But from 9 months to 12 months, you're putting in a new ACL. It doesn't have any nerves or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It has to regenerate nerves. And that's what happens in the last 3 months between months 9 and 12 is it regenerates the nerves. So the player just has this automatic feeling of where their knee and leg is in space. It's something you don't ever think about, but it's something that's obviously necessary to feel normal. And so that's why they say it takes about a year. So if I'm the Packers, what I'm hoping to see is in November, early December, he's back to close to what he was before he got hurt. And if it's a gradual way to get there, so be it, and maybe it won't be so gradual. Maybe he'll be pretty good within the first month. But, I'll believe it when I see it. You see other guys and they come back, but, they're not the same guy for a while. I think of DeGuara last year. He really didn't look back to his old self until fairly late in the season. So we'll see. But Tunya's recovery has been good enough where it doesn't look like there's going to be the Bakhtiari complications. And so the thing I'm looking more for is not early in the year, but he could. I think it's completely plausible that scenario you sketched out holds true for the second half of the season, the final third of the season, and of course, what matters most, the playoffs. So yeah, I think that's completely plausible that he could be their number one receiving target by the end of the season. That's completely plausible. Yeah.
Soothsayer Aaron Jones. Before we hop over to defense, let's take this question from Lindell. With honestly, probably the biggest question the Packers have right now: who do you think will be the starting offensive line? Because as we said, Bakhtiari, Jenkins, both questionable. Bakhtiari didn't practice today. Is this sort of just going to be patchwork until they can get those guys back, or do you feel like they have a legitimate starting five without Jenkins and Bakhtiari?
Yeah, and I'll be curious what you think. So if Bakhtiari didn't practice today and he's had an off-season surgery and he hasn't played in a preseason game, I find it a little hard to believe they would actually play him. Now they have him as questionable, so I don't know if they're really seriously considering. He's played a lot of football, so conceivably he could, but they still, with guys coming off a long-term injury like this, they like to go through, very obvious steps. And one of them I would think would be completing a full week of practice.
Right. I don't think he's completed a full week since his return.
Yeah. So I'm skeptical that he'll play. I could be wrong. Don't take this as gospel, no inside information. So I'm skeptical he'll play. Jenkins just, I would think would have a better chance, but I wonder, because I didn't realize until late on the injury report that he also has a pec injury.
Right.
So I don't know how that's affecting things. And I need to check real quick, but he was limited again today, right, in practice?
I believe so. Let me see if
Jenkins, limited participation, yes. So, I'm still thinking that these guys don't play until they're full-time participants, and maybe he was limited because they just didn't think they were going to play him, and they needed to get the majority of the snaps to the start, whoever's going to be the starter at right tackle. Now, there's also the possibility, the leeway for the injury report between whether you're limited or full participant. I think limited means anything less than the normal snaps you would take in a practice if you were healthy.
Right. So, they could sit out for 2 team snaps and be considered.
Yes, exactly. So maybe that's what's going on here too. So I don't know for sure, but I'm kind of wondering if they're going to play this week or not. And if I had to guess, I would guess Jenkins has the better chance of the two, Now watch, and Bakhtiari will be out there and Jenkins won't. But
you know,
that's just my best guess. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I
I
do.
didn't go to practice this
And
week.
our colleague Ryan Wood has made a pretty solid argument that you don't need them this week. Why risk it? Why risk it on turf in the first game back? And I know it's a divisional game, but I mean they're probably going to run away with this division. They proved last year that first week doesn't necessarily matter as long as you can bounce back from it. To your point about Tunyon, you're going to need Bakhtiari and Jenkins later in the year. Do you risk it in week one, especially on turf?
Yeah, just going by their practice, by their practice availability, their practice participation. I would bet I guess if I had to bet, I'd bet against both. But they could be, like you said, they could be playing games there, and maybe Jenkins took almost all the snaps. So we'll see. And the question, Rodgers basically said what the starting line will be if neither of those guys played, and we knew this anyway. This is what it was in camp.
Mm-hmm.
But left to right, it's Nyman, Runyon, Myers, Hanson,
yes,
and Newman, left tackle or right tackle. That's what it'll be.
And Hanson is on the depth chart as a backup center, which throws some people off. But Rodgers, LaFleur, several people have said like he will be the tackle if Jenkins or Bakhtiari couldn't go. So.
Yeah, he'll be the guard. He'll be the guard if they don't.
Guard. Go. I'm sorry, the guard.
And Newman will be the tackle. And if Jenkins plays, I think the assumption is Newman bumps into guard, and then Hanson becomes kind of the swing inside two guards and center backup.
Yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to see who runs out there for that first snap. Callum asked about Watson, which I think we addressed. Just 1 second. Ooh, when it hits you, it hits you.
Yes.
But Linda asked, I know you talked about Romeo Dobbs, Pete, but she just asked, can you buy into the hype? I guess let me add a question on to this. Is it too soon to say yes or no to that? Do you feel like you need to see him in a real game?
I think he's pretty good. Now, won't say anything stronger than that, and you don't know till they play, and it's rookies have so much to learn at that position. There's a reason that not a lot of rookie receivers make a big impact. They're doing more now in the last probably 3 years than they did for 10 years or 15 years before that.
Right.
You see more guys, more rookie receivers do more. But this guy is pretty talented. He doesn't, like, if you look, he doesn't have a trait that jumps out. He's not really big. He's not really fast. He's not super explosive. He's fine in all those areas. But you just watch practice, and he's getting open, and they're throwing him the ball a lot, and he's usually catching it. And
his ability to get open is really what stands out.
Yeah, right. And, that's no small thing. I mean, no guy, a lot of guys don't come into the league doing that. So I think he could be – so I basically buy into the hype. I mean, I'm not saying the guy's going to be the rookie of the year or anything like that, but, I think this guy is a legit good receiving NFL prospect. So long way to go from here to there, but hard not to be impressed so far. I'm not saying he's Justin Jefferson as a rookie or anything like that, but this guy can contribute. I'm thinking this guy is going to be a pretty decent contributor this year. I think he's going to be in the rotation a lot, and who knows, maybe, if he could be, maybe he'll take off and be a guy who catches 70 balls this year. That would be a lot, but even if he's around 50, that would be pretty good for a rookie.
When we got done with his media yesterday, kind of turned everything off, and he sat down. I said, "So are you nervous?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty nervous." But
I would be too.
I would be too. Exactly. If you ain't nervous, it might not mean anything to you.
Right.
Pete, let's jump to the other side of the ball real quick. I want to start with some stuff that Jair Alexander said today. Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas have both expressed an interest in covering Justin Jefferson. They both seem to think they will be the one covering Justin Jefferson all game. And Jair took a moment to talk about Jefferson and what it's going to take to cover him. So let's actually hear from him.
He has a long stride. He's a good receiver. I think he's one of the top receivers in the league. And I think that he has the ability to make plays. So that's what I think about him.
You and Rasul have both expressed interest to cover him. Are y'all just playing rock, paper, scissors out there before a snap?
Hey, we're going to see. Wherever he want to go, we'll have the best guy on him. So.
And Jair Alexander has never made it a secret that he believes he is the best guy in the league. And he has a decent argument. So, Pete, let me just put it to you. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, that's a pretty good test for week 1 with a corner unit that is, on paper, one of the best in the league, but has not really played together yet. And that position relies a lot on chemistry. What are you sort of expecting out of that group on Sunday?
Really good play. I mean, they're, Alexander's now, he's a real veteran. Douglas is a veteran. Stokes has a season underneath them. The chemistry should be good. They've had all the camp. I'll be really curious to see how they handle Jefferson. I mean, just my 2-bit opinion. I think he and Chase are the 2 best receivers in the league. Obviously, Adams is right there too, but I think both Chase and Jefferson could just they've already had really good seasons, but if you're playing them, those guys would really, really concern me if I'm a defensive coordinator. I'm just really curious to see how they do that, where if Alexander's, maybe they just keep Alexander where he is, and on plays where he's matched up, they don't double, and anywhere else they're doubling him. There's a lot of ways they could do it. I'd be tempted to put Alexander on him most of the time, though. That guy is so good, and you cannot let him beat you.
We haven't seen Darnell Savage really play since he pulled his hamstring at family night as well. Obviously, none of the starters played during the preseason. He's only got about a week and a half of practice under his belt. Any concern there, or is he veteran enough, experienced enough that he can just kind of roll out there and be ready to go?
More the latter than the former, but you just wonder how sharp he is physically. And he's a perfect case in point why you can never believe a word these guys say about injuries. Because when that happened after family night, they downplayed it, nothing real serious. Made it sound, they didn't say this, but made it sound like he'd missed maybe a week or maybe at most 2, and maybe even less than that. It was just a tweak or whatever. Well, that's 5 weeks ago now, 4 or 5 weeks ago now. So this is why you can never believe even if they're telling you the truth, you have no way to know the difference. So you just can't believe anything they tell you about injuries.
This doesn't necessarily have to do with injuries, but let's move to the front 7 real quick before we sign off. John Wayne, great name, John Wayne. Is that really your name? I'm very curious. What are your expectations for the defensive line?
That they're going to be – I was trying to think of John Wayne's real name. It was Marion Morrison. That's what it was. Because John Wayne was a stage name.
I did not know that.
Yeah. The actor.
My brother is named after my dad's favorite John Wayne character.
Who is?
Chance. He played Sheriff John T. Chance in Rio Bravo, and my brother's name is Chance.
That's right. Okay. Because in Tommy Morrison, the boxer, you probably have no idea who he was, but he was from can't remember if it was the 80s or early 90s. He was a boxer, and I think he might even have won held the title for like a cup of coffee in the late 80s, early 90s. But he was John Wayne's, I can't remember if it was his grandson or grandnephew or something like that, and Morrison is his last name. Anyway, enough of that foolishness.
John says his real name.
The D line, that's going to be a huge part of their defense, the whole front 7 even. But this is the deepest D line that they've had since I've been covering them, maybe going back to the mid 90s. But this might be deeper as far as the interior guys go. Although Wyatt so far, I mean, I don't even know if he's going to play this week. Yeah, he's pretty far down on that depth chart, but they'll be able to rotate those guys. I'll be curious to see how much they do and how much it ends up looking like, the Seahawks, when they had their best defenses in the really early 2010s, they just came at you with waves of defensive linemen. They had like 7 or 8 guys they'd rotate through, and they just pass rush in a frenzy. Now we're with the Packers D-line. You're talking more just the interior guys because the outside guys are outside linebackers. But I'm thinking they're going to rotate those guys a lot. And Jaron Reed, I think, judging off practice, could end up being a pretty savvy signing for the Packers. It looks like he's I think he's only costing him like $3 million in that vicinity, and it looks like he could be one of those guys. Not saying he's going to be an all-pro like Devondre Campbell, but a guy who they're getting really good value for.
Speaking of Devondre Campbell, that reminds me, we want to mention this. The Packers did name their captains today, and the captains, I'm just going to pull it up to make sure I'm getting them right, I believe are Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Mercedes Lewis, Devondre Campbell, Kenny Clark, and Adrian Amos. So congrats to all of those guys for being named 2022 captains. LaFleur said that 21 different guys received votes, which he said just, really speaks to, do y'all hear this? It sounds like Lambeau Field's about to cave in. I don't know if y'all can hear it.
I can't hear it from here.
Yeah. LaFleur said 21 different guys received votes, which really just sort of speaks to the leadership on this team, which is also kind of cool to think about considering how young we consider this team, especially on offense. Pete, I know that our score predictions will be in the paper over the weekend, so you don't have to say the score, but do you have any final predictions, thoughts about the Packers season opener versus the Vikings?
Yeah, but picking these games is tough enough. I mean, picking scores is impossible, and but doing it the first week is really hard. First couple of weeks, first 3 weeks. I went Packers, low scoring game. I think their defense is going to be pretty good, and just kind of my guess is, the Vikings, they have all that talent. I mean, Jefferson's a top 2 or 3 receiver. Cook is a top 5 running back. And then Thielen's a very good, he's a legit number 2 receiver. And they have a quarterback who's streaky, but he definitely has his moments and he has his games. So that's a scary offense. But they also have a new coaching staff. It takes staffs a while to get used to their players, figure out what they're good at, what they're not. The players are learning, tweaks in the offensive system, a new system. So I'm thinking, maybe the Vikings won't be as sharp early as they will be, 6 weeks from now. So I went Packers, low scoring game, but as last year's opener showed, when the Packers seem to have everything going in their favor and the Saints everything against them, who knows?
Right. And you and I will not be there, but our colleagues Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein will. Pete and I will still be helping to cover the game from Green Bay, but make sure you follow Tom's live blog as well during the game, and then we will have full coverage for you leading up to it in case there are any transactions tomorrow, and with the practice squad elevations, and then full previews and recaps on Sunday as the Packers take on the Vikings. Pete, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kassidy.
Thanks, everyone.